Okay, so when you think about the word prophet, what jumps to mind? You know, fortune teller, someone laying down the law.
Right.
But today we're diving into Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and let me tell you, it's a different kind of prophecy.
You did.
Altogether.
Yeah.
It's more like, I don't know, poetry whispering wisdom in your ear.
Yeah.
Nudging us to look at life's big questions a little differently.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating. I mean, this book is almost 100 years old.
I know.
And people are still turning to it for guidance on things like love, work, purpose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all the things we struggle with. And it's written in this incredibly beautiful poetic prose.
Yes.
You just want to slow down and savor every sentence.
Right. And the entire book is structured around this prophet,
Right.
Almustafa, who's about to leave the city of Orphalese after 12 years.
Okay.
And right before he sails away, the people ask him to speak on all these like core aspects of human experience.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're getting a cheat sheet
Exactly.
to life's biggest questions in Gibran's like unique voice.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the first things he tackles is love.
Oh, yeah.
And not like the hearts and flowers kind of love,
Right.
but the kind that shakes you to your core, that lifts you up and breaks you down.
Yeah. He even compares it to a thresher. He says, like sheaves of corn, he gathers you unto himself.
Yeah.
He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks.
Right.
He grinds you to whiteness.
It's intense.
It's intense, right?
It is. But if you look closely at what he's saying, it's not about love being cruel or anything.
Right.
It's about the kind of surrender that real love, that true love requires.
Oh.
It's letting go of your ego, letting go of your defenses,
Okay.
being willing to be vulnerable, even if it means you might get hurt.
Yeah.
And he says it's in that process of being stripped bare that we're made ready for what he calls God's sacred feast.
Wow. So it's like love is this refining fire that burns away everything that isn't essential. And what you're left with is just the purest version of yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about how often we try to like resist that kind of surrender in love.
Oh, totally.
You know, we want the joy without the pain.
Right. Like,
Connection without the vulnerability. But Gibran seems to suggest that you can't have one without the other.
you can't. Right. And it makes you wonder if maybe some of the heartbreak we experience is actually love trying to break us open. Help us grow into something more, you know? It's like that saying, the only way out is through.
Right.
Have you ever felt that in your own life where you've had to go through something painful, but it's actually led to a deeper understanding of what love is?
Absolutely. It's almost like those difficult experiences, those painful experiences, they force us to confront our own limitations,
Yeah.
our fears, the walls that we build up around our hearts.
Right.
And in the process of breaking down those walls, we create space for a more authentic, a more expansive kind of love to come in.
So we've talked about love being this powerful force, but what about when that love leads to marriage? How does Gibran look at that kind of lifelong commitment?
Well, if you think he's all about romantic fusion, you might want to think again.
Okay.
He actually cautions against creating a bond of love.
Mm.
Instead, he uses this really beautiful image of a moving sea between the shores of your souls.
Oh, so not two people becoming one,
No.
but two individuals kind of maintaining their own identities
Exact.
while navigating life together.
Yeah, I picture like two ships sailing side by side.
Yeah.
They each have their own course, but they're connected by the same ocean. They're moving in the same direction.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then he takes it a step further with this beautiful image of the lute strings. He writes, even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music.
It's beautiful.
So you can have this like harmony and shared purpose without sacrificing your individuality.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, a lot of couples struggle with today.
Absolutely.
You know, finding that balance between togetherness and independence.
Yeah, and Gibran's words offer this really insightful perspective on how to make that work. You know, it's not about clinging to each other.
Right.
It's about creating space for growth, both individually and as a couple.
So helpful. Now, from couples, let's shift to children.
Okay.
Because Gibran has this really unique take on being a parent.
Yeah.
He says, children aren't our possessions. They're arrows sent forth by life itself.
And the parents were just the bows.
Oh,
Entrusted with launching those arrows toward their destiny.
powerful image.
It is.
It is. And here's how he puts it. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might. that his arrows may go swift and far.
It's beautiful.
It is.
It is.
It's like we have this incredible responsibility to guide our children, to nurture them.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, their path is their own.
It is. And what's so profound about that is that it takes the pressure off parents to control their children's lives.
Yeah.
Like, it frees us to just focus on providing the love and support that they need to discover their own unique purpose.
And it makes you think about how often we try to mold our children into versions of ourselves.
Oh, I know.
You know, projecting our own unfulfilled dreams onto them.
Yeah, we all do it.
But Gibran's saying, no, they have their own journey. They have their own mark to hit.
It's about recognizing their inherent worth, their potential, separate from our own aspirations, which can be both liberating and a little terrifying.
I can imagine,
Parents.
Like, wow, I have this amazing opportunity to help shape this little human.
Yeah.
But ultimately, their flight path is their own.
It is.
That takes a lot of trust.
A lot of trust.
In them and in the universe.
Exactly.
Speaking of letting go, Gibran also has some insightful things to say about giving.
He does.
And it's not about just donating to charity. It's about a much deeper kind of generosity.
It is. He distinguishes between giving possessions and giving of yourself, and suggests that true generosity, it comes from sharing your essence, your spirit, not just your material wealth.
He tells this funny story about a dog burying bones while following pilgrims to a holy city, he writes. And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city?
Isn't that how we are?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The dog's so focused on holding on to these possessions that it's missing the whole point of the journey.
Exactly. And isn't that so often how we operate in life?
It is.
Clinging to what we have, afraid to let go.
Yeah.
And then we miss out on the abundance that's all around us.
So true giving comes from this place of abundance, not scarcity. It's trusting that we have enough to share, that the universe will provide.
Absolutely.
Which makes me think about work, because so many people see work as just a means to an end.
Right, yeah.
But Gibran has this really interesting perspective on how work can actually be a source of, deep meaning and fulfillment.
He does. He challenges that idea of work being a curse.
Yeah.
And suggests that it can be a way to connect with our purpose, to express our love, to make a real contribution to the world.
And he even says that work done with love can bind us to ourselves, to each other, and to the divine.
It's true.
Like that old saying, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. And he uses the example of a weaver creating cloth or a builder constructing a house, imagining the beloved like wearing that cloth or living in that house. It's about, imbuing our work with love and seeing it as an act of service, not just a way to earn a paycheck.
It's beautiful how he says, work is love made visible.
It is beautiful.
When we approach our work with that kind of intention, it becomes an offering, a way to connect to something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And then there's this line that always gives me chills. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God.
Wow.
It's like you're tapping into this ancient lineage of creators and realizing that we're all part of this grand tapestry of creation. It's beautiful. Yeah, it really is. And I think it speaks to that longing that we all have, to find meaning and purpose in our work, to feel like we're part of something bigger.
Totally. Okay, shifting gears a bit.
Yeah.
Gibran also talks about this interesting kind of duality between joy and sorrow. And he doesn't see them as opposites, but rather two sides of the same coin.
Right. He uses this really powerful metaphor of a cup, he says. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven?
Oh, wow.
Meaning that the very vessel that can hold our joy was also forged in the fire of sorrow.
So it's not about striving for a life of only joy, because sorrow is inevitably going to be woven in.
Right, and he actually encourages us to embrace both.
Really?
Yeah. He writes, when you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy.
Okay.
When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight.
It's like he's saying that joy and sorrow aren't separate. They're just different expressions of the same, life force.
Yeah, which makes me think about how, some of the most joyful moments in my life have often followed, periods of intense grief or loss.
Right.
It's like you can't fully appreciate the light without having known the darkness. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. It's like those times of sorrow, those times of grief, they actually expand our capacity for joy. You know, we're stretched, we're deepened by those experiences.
Okay.
And when the joy comes, it's even more profound because we've experienced that full spectrum of human emotion.
That's so true. Now, from emotions, let's talk about something a little more concrete.
Okay.
Houses.
Houses are.
I know, sounds random.
Yeah.
But Gibran has this way of turning even like the most ordinary things into these metaphors for deeper truths.
He does. Yeah, what he does is he contrasts houses as anchors versus masts. So anchors, obviously, they keep us grounded, keep us secure.
Right.
But masts allow us to set sail, to explore, to venture out into the unknown.
So it's like our homes can either be these like comfortable prisons,
Yeah.
or they can be launching pads for growth and adventure.
Exactly. And Gibran warns against letting our desire for comfort become a trap.
Okay.
He says, "Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul," and then walks grinning in the funeral.
Wow. Dark.
It is a little dark, but it makes you think about how easy it is to get complacent, to settle for a life that feels safe and predictable, even if it means we're sacrificing our dreams.
It's true. It's like he's challenging us to ask ourselves, is my home, is it supporting my growth, or is it holding me back?
Right.
Is it filled with things that nourish my soul, or is it just a bunch of clutter that's weighing me down?
Yeah, it's not about getting rid of all our possessions.
Right.
But it's about being mindful of how our environment is shaping our inner lives.
And realizing that sometimes the greatest adventures start when we step outside of our comfort zones,
Nice.
both literally and figuratively. Speaking of stepping outside of our comfort zones, let's talk about pleasure.
Okay.
It's a topic that gets a bad rap, I think.
It does, yeah.
But Gibran offers this really nuanced perspective on it.
He does. He acknowledges that allure of pleasure.
Yeah.
But he's careful to point out that it's a freedom song, not the ultimate freedom itself.
So enjoy it, but don't mistake it for the main event.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of a man digging for roots and finding treasure.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
sometimes the things that bring us the most lasting fulfillment, they come unexpectedly, not from us chasing after these fleeting pleasures.
Right. Good reminder to stay open to the unexpected, to not get so fixated on one path that we miss out on all the treasures that could be hidden along the way.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? How do you approach pleasure in your own life?
I think it's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Allowing ourselves to experience joy and delight, but not letting the pursuit of pleasure become like our sole focus.
Right.
Because true fulfillment, I think, comes from something deeper, something more enduring.
I agree. It's about savoring those moments of pleasure, but recognizing they're just one part of this much richer tapestry.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've covered a lot.
we have.
Love, loss, the meaning of work, even how we see our homes.
Even houses.
But then Gibran takes us to something that can be both deeply personal and universally experienced. Beauty.
And this is where he really shines.
Yeah, he does.
Gibran elevates beauty beyond mere aesthetics. He calls it an ecstatic experience of the soul.
And he describes beauty in all these different ways. Some see her as gentle, others powerful. Some hear her whispering, others hear her shouting.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to illustrate that subjective nature of beauty, how it speaks to each of us in a unique way.
Right.
But what's interesting is that despite these varying perspectives, there's this underlying sense that beauty is something that transcends the physical realm. It touches something deep within us, something that resonates with our very being.
And he even goes so far as to say, it is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see though you close your eyes, and a song you hear though you shut your ears.
Wow.
He's saying beauty is not just something that we perceive with our senses,
Right.
something that we feel in our souls.
Yes, and it makes me think about those moments when you're just captivated by something beautiful. A breathtaking sunset, a piece of music that moves you to tears, a work of art that just takes your breath away.
Totally.
And it's like, in those moments, time stops and you're completely immersed in the experience.
Yes, and it doesn't even have to be something conventionally beautiful. It
Yeah.
could be just a simple act of kindness, a moment of connection with nature, anything that evokes this sense of awe and wonder.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that sense of awareness.
Yeah,
That ability to see the beauty in the everyday,
right.
the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Which is such a gift because it means beauty is accessible to everyone,
It is.
regardless of their circumstances, and it's something we can actively cultivate. We can.
By paying attention, being present, opening our hearts to the wonder that surrounds us.
I love that. So we've explored love, loss, the meaning of work. We've even found beauty in the mundane.
We have.
But what about the big questions, the mysteries that have always fascinated and terrified humanity?
Exactly. What does Gibran have to say about things like religion and death?
Well, he doesn't shy away from them. In fact, he weaves them into the very fabric of life. When he's asked about religion, Gibran responds with, "Have I spoken this day of aught else?"
Wow, powerful statement.
It is, suggesting that religion isn't just about rituals and beliefs.
Right.
It's about how we live our lives, how we treat other people, how we approach every aspect of our existence.
So it's not about separating the sacred from the secular, but seeing the sacred in everything.
Exactly. He talks about bringing our whole selves to our spiritual practice, not just compartmentalizing it, And he writes, "All your hours are wings that beat through space from self to self." But beautiful. It reminds me of that saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yes, exactly.
Finding the divine in the everyday, the extraordinary in the ordinary.
And then when it comes to death,
Oh, yeah.
Gibran doesn't offer easy answers or try to sugarcoat anything. Instead, he encourages us to face our fear of death by embracing the fullness of life.
He says, "If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one."
It's like he's saying that death isn't an ending.
Right.
It's a transformation, emerging back into the source from which we came.
And the imagery he uses to describe that transition is incredible.
It is. He talks about standing naked in the wind,
Okay.
melting into the sun.
Wow.
Our breath freed from its restless tides, rising and expanding to seek God unencumbered.
Both awe-inspiring and comforting.
Yeah.
At the same time, it makes you think about death in a whole new light. Not as something to fear, but as just a natural part of this whole cycle of life.
And ultimately, I think Gibran reminds us that we are not just these physical bodies. We are something much greater, something eternal.
He writes, "That which is you dwells above the mountain and roves with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth or digs holes into darkness for safety, but a thing free, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the ether." So as we wrap up our deep dive into the prophet, what's the key takeaway? What do you hope our listeners walk away with from Gibran's words?
I think Gibran is inviting us to see life through a more profound, a more poetic lens.
Yeah.
He's challenging us to embrace the paradoxes, to find beauty in the brokenness, to recognize that everything is interconnected. He's encouraging us to live with intention, to love deeply, to work with purpose, and above all, to remember that we are not alone.
Yeah.
We're all part of something so much greater than ourselves, something eternal and boundless.
Beautifully said. And to leave our listeners with one final thought from Gibran, you are eternity and you are the mirror. What does that mean for you in your life right now?